All right. This is great. Great to see you again, Brent. This is episode 7 of the GNUSpective. Lots of good stuff to talk about today. So, how you doing, Brent? It's been a minute since we've had one of these, and of course, you and I, talk on and off here and there quite a bit. Especially last night, our kind of couple-hour conversations about things and all that. But otherwise, any how you doing?
Doing really well. Good to talk to you again, and be in the seat where we're having a chance to engage like this. Actually, given what we'll be discussing today, kind of the breadth of it, kind of falls into that exciting category of this topic is so exciting that even I can't wait to hear what I have to say. It's kind of one of those kinds of setups. So it's really kind of fun to be here, and looking forward to kind of breaking down some of the cool stuff, particularly in the AI landscape. So
Yeah, and like I was telling you last night, I know you kind of haven't been following the Telegram stuff, but that's typical of you, and we'll talk about that in a second. But kind of we should probably make, or I should make the announcement that I started something called Super Genius Chronicles on YouTube, and I said it's got a couple videos that are on there now, but a bunch of them are being edited. But it's going to talk about kind of the state of AI, but also a lot of different things. I mean, programming with AI, partnering with that, and the best practices for that I've found over the last couple of years because I've been using it for a couple of years now, and you have too. And so there's probably going to be a chance where I think that you and I should get on a separate kind of thing like this, but kind of not an AMA, but more of, hey, let's go over, our thoughts on, AI integration with programming or software engineering and software architecture. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. But let's first off kind of get to the point where there was some question about whether you were still around on Telegram, and you and I talked a little bit about this last night and trying to figure out why are they
yeah,
saying that? I mean, you've been around, but why don't you kind of explain, you know, why you weren't on Telegram when you really never were?
yeah, to get that kind of notice that someone was saying, "Oh, where's his presence there?" Well, my presence on Telegram was always very thin at all times. Where I've been
Hold
spending
on
my time.
before you continue. I can attest to that because I pinged you on Telegram yesterday saying, "Hey, we're going to have the AMA thing coming up." We switched it from Thursday to Friday because you had some personal stuff, and you didn't answer me for like 36 hours, right? And that's always happened. And I know if I want to get a hold of you, I either text message you or I go on to Element or something like that, or what else, WhatsApp or something like that. You're
Mhm.
rarely on Telegram, and I should have remembered that. But I kind of, you know, somebody had mentioned that you hadn't been there for, a couple months, but it's really, yeah, you haven't been on Telegram. So go ahead, continue.
Well,
Sorry.
yeah, I mean, yeah, even during the height of navigating some of the key technical choices for Genius, that was just not the place where I was operating. It was with the team. It was with the individual contributors. And the Element is our primary way. The tool called Element was our primary way of communicating, and that's not publicly facing, and that's where there's tremendous breadth of communication from me. So Telegram for me is like. And I know that we've got team members that are not technical that are working in Telegram, and usually I don't interface with them. Occasionally, I would go in there in the past and answer a question or two, particularly if they were hounding about Ken's not available. Where's Ken? And that's rare. That's rare. But on those few rare occasions, and then they start knocking on my head, and I'm like, okay, over to Telegram. What's going on here, guys? But
Well, let's
yeah.
not dwell on that because it was just I looked on I saw it pop up in Telegram and I'm like, what the heck's going on here? I'm like I'm trying to remember, and I'm like, why isn't he on Telegram? And we're like so heads down in Element, and yeah, you were in there constantly. I wouldn't say hounding, but CTOing, the guys, over there and hounding me, on hey, why is this architecture this way? And I mean, we've had so many long conversations, including last night, talking about stuff and things like that. But let's move on because I don't want to dwell on that kind of stuff. I really believe it was just FUD, coming in where people were like, "Oh, he hasn't been on here for a year," and it distracted me, and I hate
Mhm.
that. It's like, why am I answering these people's questions like that? But it was just like, okay, why isn't he involved on Telegram? And then, I had to go back in my memory and remember, we do 99%, and the same thing for Justin and Itzafu and Henrique. They're never on Telegram either. And so next they're going to be like, why isn't Henrique on Telegram? Well, because we're heads down over on Element talking code. I get on every day with Henrique and Justin just on something called it's Elements internal video thing, right? And we don't show our picture, but it's like them having their desk right next to me, right? And then we'll mute, and then every once in a while, Henrique will say, "Hey guys, I got something, blah 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 blah." It's just like being next door or in an office with desks and stuff like that. And so I prefer that. I don't want to be in Telegram, typing in a text message and get distracted from us, executing on the code and stuff like that. But anyway, let's move on. This is going to be more about kind of my take on the last month and a half. I mean, we've been pretty heads down on the code. I am bringing on board some new engineers to help kind of finalize the mainnet stuff right now. We only have a couple little things left, mainly the bridging part from mainnet into the Super Genius network. And once that is finished, which should be close to, we're working on it, but it should be close to after we get PhaseNet 3 bugs out of the way, which we killed a lot of them in the last couple weeks. And Justin's going to be releasing Phase 3.2, which kills a lot of bugs. And most of the bugs weren't in the code side of things, it was bringing in the jobs from the outside world to distribute to everybody, and the code was on a certain server doing that, and that kind of had some bugs and would go down and stuff like that. So it's not the end of the world. We can fix that, but the other side of the code is just because there's no jobs available, it just stops, right? And sometimes, yes, it will crash over there, and we did fix those kind of bugs. We figured out a couple problems with the OSX, but I want this to turn into more of um, kind of the process that I'm going through in the AI and keep people up to date on kind of what I'm thinking about for this project. And so I'm going to be sharing my screen a little bit about this, and I'm hoping I can not be all over the place. And so Brent, you can kind of say, "Hey, Ken, you're we're discussing this and you're off there." I don't usually do that, but so we should be good.
Well, if
Um,
it's fun though, it's like, no, let's just roll with it.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. We only have an hour though, so I want to make sure. I mean, I'll probably have to do more of these, and I plan on doing them on the Super Genius Chronicles. And so I'm thinking, I set up something called OBS, the Open Broadcast System, on my computer to basically start recording these videos, and you can do streaming, and we can do live streaming from there instead of in restream where we are now. But it's also good for doing kind of a non-live recording of us going over a bunch of this stuff and then having it edited down instead of, you know, uh,
Mm,
listening
okay.
to us drone on or there's a couple of points in there where I'm sitting there programming and I realize I'm just totally silent, right? In there. And that's going to be edited out in the Super Genius Chronicles because I'm like, and I'm like, oh yeah, here's what I'm doing right now because I'm not used to recording myself while I'm programming, but I'm getting better at it. So anyway, let's start by talking about HRM. Okay, so everybody knows I'm a big fan, and I'm going to share my screen of some of the stuff that I bookmarked and I'm following up on. I'm keeping my uh, my brain active, but more kind of on the bleeding edge, cutting edge of what's going on in the AI space, and there's a reason for that. Okay, so let me first let's see here if I can open up a new window here. Let's see here, x.com. All right, so I'm going to kind of move this window over. Let's see if I can share my screen. All right, home X. Here we go. All right, so this should There we go. Cool. All right, so I'm going to bounce in and out of things like full screen right now. I wish there was a way to kind of do an overlay of us. Oh, maybe this will work. There we go. Okay, so here's my X account. Okay. And a lot of times what I do is, yeah, I'll get garbage like this, right? But what I do is I end up watching a lot of things with AI. Okay. And so, like today, I just watched this and I'm like, oh, I got to go look at this. And I got this bookmarked for me to read. And I've read a lot of these. Um, it's basically what I'm doing is watching a lot of. Okay. So let me back up a little bit. In the past, what I've said is I said, we're building the infrastructure and everybody else is going to be able to build stuff that allows us to run decentralized. I'm not too worried about it. You have the Googles out there, you have the Microsoft's out there, you have Anthropic, all those guys doing this research, DeepSeek, all of that. That is, we're leveraging their research and their development on how to run stuff locally, but not only locally, decentralized on the Genius network. And so I'm constantly watching these guys and watching what they're doing because in the last 6 months, there's more and more stuff that can be run on the Genius network. Almost everything now, believe it or not, like from an LLM to that's a large language model like ChatGPT to now they just Google just dropped this new thing here. But I kind of want to back up. I want to start talking about HRM because that's an interesting thing. But just so everybody knows, like I'm starting to read. I read through this guy's stuff this morning, right? And he basically says Google released an open source Gemma 3 that basically allows you to hyper efficient local AI. Okay. Now, I realize that that could run on high end Macs. Like I have a Mac Studio sitting right here, and I can run that. And I have run stuff, and I'll show a little bit about that. But this morning, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Google's hit a milestone here that we can leverage this stuff and this open source, and we can basically distribute this into coming up into the Genius AI network and run all this stuff decentralized. Now, let me kind of first, I guess I should start off by showing the SG processing manager stuff that we're currently working on. And what this is doing for Genius is allowing us to bring in all these business development opportunities like ChatGPT or running a doctor AI or running a game with AI behind it. Or, we have all these verticals that we're leveraging. And how we're doing that is let's see if I can view tab. All right. All right. So I'm going to switch over to this one and I'm going to go to GitHub Genius Ventures / SG Processing Manager. Okay. So this is all open source, of course. All right. So I'm going to share this tab. All right. So right here, what I did about 2 months ago is I started realizing that in order to get all these different models and stuff into the hyper decentralized Genius AI system, all the nodes and distributed and doing distributed large language models or distributed machine learning or any kind of AI distributed or even distributed rendering, we needed some kind of format. And so what I came up with is I went into, and I'm using AI to help do all this stuff, by the way. It took me about 3 or 4 hours to kind of talk with Grok about this schema. It was Grok or ChatGPT or one of them. Might even have been Claude. But I'm leveraging AI to increase the rate at which we can onboard businesses on or different verticals onto Genius AI. And the reason this is important is because the infrastructure is pretty much done, but what we need to do is have these verticals and samples of like a streaming application, a video streaming application, or an audio application. The good news is these days, people are taking what other applications have been like, say, a YouTube application or something like that, and they're using AI and rewriting it in like 3 days, and then they're turning around and putting it on back end infrastructures and things like that. So they're kind of missing the point of decentralization. But what that does is shows me that it's very quick. And I've been doing this for the last 6 months. Is I've done a couple projects that I can do I did one in 6 hours that would normally take somebody 3 months to write. And we talked about this last night. But this processing manager was done in about 2 hours. And I had to explain to the AI, here's how Genius works, blah, 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 blah. But what it did was it helped me generate this thing called a schema. And what this is it says, here's the properties of a configuration file that allow us to put large language models in a decentralized Genius AI system or any decentralized system. And it kind of talks about, here's the version, here's the processing definition specification, here's the author, declare external inputs. It kind of configures how you can uh, load your business into Genius AI or your machine learning or whatever into Genius AI. Like if you're in the business of image recognition and pulling in videos, for instance, and trying to image recognize somebody's face, right? That's called image recognition in machine learning. It has nothing to do with large language models, but it's like pulling in videos and stuff like that, and then facial recognition kind of stuff, which is uh, kind of scary a little bit, but they're doing it already. I mean, the government's doing it. China's definitely doing it, but it allows you to pick what kind of machine learning you want to do. And right now we're just doing image recognition, but this, which is almost complete, as soon as uh, Justin and I will get back onto this. We're working on this next week. It allows you to bring in any kind of GPU processing, to put it bluntly, because I don't want to say it's just AI. Like you could use this configuration to render images in an animated movie, right? So it's anything you can do with GPU. So we've abstracted it away so that it doesn't have to be AI. Now AI is of course the first thing we're doing, but it also enables us to um, basically do stuff like HRM. Okay, so it's a good segue to that.
And Ken, just before we jump into the HRM discussion, you did say mention abstraction, but I want to kind of clarify that working with this kind of model doesn't require that you have any kind of intimate knowledge of Genius and how Genius functions.
Or
Uh,
code for that matter, really.
yeah, it is just like you're just thinking in terms of the model that you want to execute. So all of those complexities are also abstracted away.
Yeah, it's everything's abstracted away. So this is like I said, it's a configuration thing. It's like you're saying, and we'll have a bunch of configurations that'll be automatic. It's like, hey, you want to render a movie? Here's your configuration. Just load that into Genius and pay the Genius tokens, and away you go, type of thing. And so we're making it dirt easy, or super easy, or zero friction. Or negative friction, but zero friction in this. It's like, hey, just go kind of fill out this form on what you want, or go to our marketplace and say, hey, I want to start rendering a movie. Give me the schema that I can load into Genius to do that, and here's my movie, or here's my output where I want to output the movie, and or here's the it's kind of putting block pieces together. Like you could do one that says, hey, AI, help me write the script for this movie. And it's an animated movie, blah, blah, blah. And then it'll use the LLM part of this schema to basically generate you a script. And then you'll say, okay, now as a second block, I want you to generate the movie for me. Right. And that second block will use the second set of configurations that say, hey, start rendering these. There could be an intermediate block that says, hey, create these characters. And I'm kind of going over that stuff in my Super Genius Chronicles YouTube videos, where I show how you can go from describing a character in a game, or getting Grok's input and helping kind of, iterate on the narrative or the character, not design, but yeah, kind of the character design, but his background and stuff like that, to in-game animated character in 20 minutes. And that's one of the things I'm going to be doing on the GNUSpective, or sorry, the Genius Chronicles, Super Genius Chronicles. But it's all going to relate to Genius AI as well. Well, a lot of it is. Some of it won't. Like I'm going to be doing cooking and some other stuff. But
I
um,
I figured Ken had also mentioned that there's nothing about what this is that is a departure from what a consumer of any given vertical, if they wanted to go do something on a platform other than Genius AI, and I don't recommend that. But even if that were the case, they would still need to have something kind of the equivalent, an abstraction that describes how the pieces of the AI, is processing is meant to flow, et cetera. So, for example, Pocket Flow is an example of something that is an abstraction where someone could specify how they want all their pieces of AI to be sequenced, et cetera. So there's nothing here that would deter anyone from using our system like, oh, well, why do I have to do this? I don't have to do this elsewhere. No, you always have to do this. You just want to have a really sleek abstraction, and that's what this is.
yeah, 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 perfect. Okay, so let's talk about HRM, and I'm going to go on Team GPT. So there's a couple things about this that I kind of want to mention in general, and then this is kind of like the stuff that I've been, part time doing to kind of for the vision of us getting to mainnet and then after mainnet. It's mainly business development stuff or onboarding and how we're going to onboard them very quickly. We already can onboard the nodes very quickly, right? It's like 5 minute integration and you're live. In fact, sometimes not even that. It's like download a game and play it and you're live, right? But the next abstract or the next phase of us for Genius is getting and onboarding the business side of things for people using us instead of Chat GPT or using us instead of YouTube or using our system instead of this and that. And so, what I did was to kind of prove that it's fairly easy. I integrated, okay, so we have this thing called Team GPT. And what this is a pretty cool interface for AI, but you can select the models and credentials for what systems you want to use, like Anthropic, right? And so I imported Anthropic, and we have an API key, but that allows us to use all these models like Claude, Opus, and we can use this in a collaborative fashion. It's the only one that I found that's really cool about doing that, where I can go in there and start a chat, and then Henrique comes in and starts chatting. And we've done this recently, but this costs quite a bit of money because they're API calls. If you're using Claude Opus, oh my God, I used Claude Opus, and like for 4 hours, it was like $20 worth of API calls. And I'm like, that's crazy. And then I dumped down to Sonnet, and it was like 50 cents. So you got to be really careful about which one you use because they charge more for like Opus 4 than they do for Sonnet. And then OpenAI is in here too, and so we're configured to use like Dolly and GPT and GPT-5 and all that. And even better is there's this GPT image generator, and I'll in a video that I'm going to be doing probably next week about how to get from um, AI description of a character to in game in 20 minutes. Part of it is that GPT-1 image generator, and this kind of is the most beneficial for that, and I'll kind of show that off. But what I also did is this LM Studio here. Let me bring the screen up a little bit bigger so people can see this. Okay, so LM Studio. All right, so LM Studio is a local program that allows you to manage your models from something called Hugging Face. You can load the models in, and I have a Mac Studio that has 192 gigabytes of memory that's shared between the GPU and the CPU. Okay, most high-end GPUs like the NVIDIA chipset, they come with like 16 gigabytes. Some of the higher end ones come with like 64 gigabytes. Well, I have 192 gigabytes to load in, and what I did was I spent about 3 or 4 hours integrating into this online chat GPT stuff, this LM Studio, which is sitting on my Mac, sitting right here underneath my computer, underneath the monitor right here. And it has, 8 terabytes of hard drive. It's a monster, but it's like a year and a half old, but it's not the latest Mac Studio, but it's a pretty good monster. It was like a lot of money. The new ones are like 15K, and I can't wait for the newest ones are probably going to be like 25K. But we don't want to go down that road. What I'm doing is showing how you can integrate with external devices, and then Genius will come in, and you can basically will be able to you do the same thing, and then all the processing will go out to all the Genius devices through these kind of SaaS based front ends like Team GPT. And so what I did was I showed that, you know, you can run this GPT OSS 20B, which is a model from ChatGPT. It's their open source 20 billion parameter one. And, I configured it to basically, um, run this model name. I gave it kind of everything it could do. I hooked up the ability for it to search the internet on my Mac through LM Studio. It took me like, yeah, I'd say a total of about 6 hours to set everything up because I had to do this funky kind of weird stuff. But in order to get it to go through um, uh, using an API key and kind of mimic OpenAI's API. It mimics it mostly. LM Studio does, but what it doesn't do is it accept an API key and basically make sure that nobody can just like blast into my Mac and start using this, right? So it is you can't because it's gated through something called Cloudflare with an API key, and that's what I set up here. But anyway, but I also installed this thing called Quen 330 billion instruct, which is a uh, equivalent to Claude's coding capabilities, really. And those two are free. And so now what I've done is I enabled all the members of Genius AI to collaboratively, either use OpenAI or Anthropic's Claude, but they can also use LM Studio for free, and there's no more cost because it's sitting here on my computer that's idle for 90% of the time. Well, guess what Genius is? When your computer's idle, we can use that. So this is kind of a interim proof of concept on how easy it is to embed your external devices or your external API onto things like Team GPT, or there's other ones that are out there, but this is the best one I found because we can do things like this. And Brent, you can kind of come in here and if you want on your computer, and I used GPT OSS 20 billion, which is equivalent to something called O3 Mini, and I came in and I said, hey, come on, get to the scroll button. All right, it's not going to do that. All right, so I'll scroll up the hard way. All right, so in here, what I started out was I said, hey, there's this new thing called HRM, and this guy on YouTube is describing this, and I understand it because I went through this. This is one of my this was he had something called Thread Reader. Oh God, I hate that. Get out of here. That basically took his X posts and basically put it out on what the hierarchical reasoning model was, right? And this is like state of the art, just came out, very, very recently. And it's kind of how, LLMs can use critical challenged AI, current language models, primarily employ chain of thought techniques. But people can go read this, and I can actually post the link to this in the chat. Let me do that really quick. So people who want to kind of see that, let's see here, chat. All right. So I'm going to post this here. I'm hoping I'm not going too fast. Oh, the stupid freaking ads here. Anyway, and so this kind of describes everything. I read through it. I haven't read the paper completely through yet, but he kind of gives a very technical. Since I understand how LLMs work and chain of thought reasoning works, I kind of read the article and I'm like, okay, I get what they're doing pretty quickly. But then what I wanted to do is say, hey, I don't want to sit there and have to go through and think about this for a long time about how I'm going to integrate this. But I have this great idea. I say, I have this design, hey, let's explore a design that would use our SG processing manager that we talked about before, schema in Genius. And I gave him the schema and all that before. I think it's in the files here. as part of its knowledge base. You can see the project knowledge over here. I said, and the paper here, let's discuss how we can integrate to define a set of nodes that could be used to do the HRM, right, on the Genius network. And it came back with this, and it's this is GPT OSS 20 billion. I could have run this through Grok or any of them, but it basically said, here you go. Here's the high level design that maps that SG processing schema that I was talking about to you being able to do hierarchical reasoning model on your Genius AI network. And so I'm telling everybody, let me make a bold statement. AI, if you don't use AI to help you do this stuff, I the total look, I did this 2 days ago. It generated this, it generated the whole schema. Now I had to look through it. I said, well, okay, here's something that we've looked at before with DeepSeek called mixture of experts. And I want that to also be embedded. And it said, okay, short answer, HRM doesn't describe this. And I said, okay, that's great. But then I, the architecture preserves. Okay, I said, okay, I want to do this. I said, I know it doesn't have it, but this is my idea of, and I'm pretty sure this is going to work. My intuition is telling me this is going to work. Now, what I want you to do is like not poke holes in my intuition, but help me see the path that I have from point A to point B. And I know my intuition is telling me it's possible. I know it's possible just from my experience. But I said, okay, I want to do this. Nonetheless, the HRM framework can be extended. This is my intuition talking. And so I'm going to make a bold statement. If you're not using AI to expedite your processes to get your intuition or your things done, you're going to be left behind, and you're going to not have a job, because I did this stuff, I swear, in 20 minutes. And in the end, it came up and it's like, oh, yeah, if you put the planner here and you gate the network and you a mixture of experts, and then this all stuff goes into, Genius, how the SG processing manager will work with this and how it'll set it up. And this is how in 20 minutes, or maybe it was an hour, even if it was an hour, how we can embed that new cool hierarchical reasoning model to simulate a brain and push this through Genius AI's infrastructure.
So, Ken, I figured to a bit amplify the drama, because this really is
The
amazing.
passion, this is, I guess,
The
drama.
passion here, the passion's a better word.
Yeah.
I really do want to, myself, I want to call out that what Ken is describing, that sequence of events he went through, the intuition, he directs the AI comes back with a result that reflects where he's trying to go. That whole sequence and that iteration is essentially identical to what you see with Marvel Comics Iron Man movies, where you see Iron Man who says, okay, this is what I want my technology to be. And he says that to Jarvis. Jarvis comes back and says, oh, well, then you need to do this. And then Iron Man might argue. It's like, no, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
It's got to do like this. So he goes back to his intuition, but Jarvis comes back with a result. And we marvel at that when we see that in the movies. But what we're watching right here, what Ken is explaining, effectively is exactly that.
Yeah.
That level of sophistication. And if your mind is blown reflecting on that, then you are properly understanding what's happening.
Yeah, he's way to Eli 5 it for me. I appreciate that, Brent. That's why I love having you on here. Yeah. So yeah, I go at 100 miles an hour too, because I'm so passionate. It's so cool. This stuff is so cool. It's like, oh my God, people just do not realize what's coming. And I'm like constantly, let me go back to the X stuff. I'm constantly watching this stuff, and I'm just amazed at how it's funneling everything I predicted in the last, since 2016. It's all funneling down to what we built with Genius and all that. It's all like, well, that's great. I'm glad you guys solved what we thought needed to be solved. And guess what? We're there for you, and we're going to be able to like shoehorn you, not really shoehorn you, funnel you right down into the Genius network for our benefit, for the businesses side of things. So they're all doing all this research stuff, right? Like, fine tuning. Here, let me show you this. Fine tuning Gemma 3. This just came out today, 4 hours ago. I've already read this, And I'm like, oh, that's cool. So we could actually people could fine tune their models and then shove them into Genius and then basically have like a doctor, right? Fine tune it to basically be a perfect doctor for your health condition. Cool. Now you can load that model into Genius and have an app that you can basically talk to your own virtual doctor about, your health and stuff like that. It's so exciting for me because, um, you know, I guess because I had a vision of this stuff coming to fruition, and now it's like a fire hose of stuff that's coming out. I mean, if you look at my bookmarks, every day I'm like, oh gosh, that's so awesome. We're gonna be able to put this in Genius and figure out how to do that in 20 minutes, and then we're gonna do it in such a generic way with our schema that we'll never have to code again. We'll just be like configuring. Oh yeah, okay, you want to do that? Sure, we'll configure. Just write out kind of what it is, and how the things operate, and the kind of steps that it needs to take to do it, and then feed it to Genius, and boom, it's all done, and everybody gets paid. And so this is what's so cool about this is, you know, uh, this is another one that I looked at. That's another thing. I'm like, oh my god, this like helps Genius as well, because now a new embedding model cuts the DB cost or your storage cost, which is good for decentralization, by 200 times. It's like, okay, cool. Now, that's cool, and it's like a small module that is a bridge between what we're doing now, and it's a small module that we can plug in that basically would allow 200x more efficiency with data in the decentralized network. This might be, version 1.1 of the Genius AI network. Well, we're not going to do this right now, but it's kind of the vision for the next 5 years of doing this. But some of this other stuff, you know, uh, this is something completely different, but I'll talk about that in a second. Traditional RAG versus agentic RAG, clearly explained with visuals. This was kind of cool just because this is how to build $1 billion company. And I looked through all his stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, this is cool. We're using almost all of this stuff, how to build a lean company. We're using 90% of what he says in there. I disagree with a couple things, but that's okay. I like something called Trello better than some of the other stuff he had there. And then here's something with recurrent neural networks on training loss. But this stuff is coming fast and furious because we have Google doing it, Anthropic doing it, Microsoft doing it. All the Chinese are, with DeepSeek releasing, but they're not releasing product. What they're releasing is technology that they're not monetizing or not figuring out how to monetize. And here I am looking through this and going, and I've always done this. It's like, hey, that's a great technology. Now let's figure out how to monetize that thing or how to make it a product. And that's what I'm really good at. And so I'm looking through all this technology going, hey, I know how to build a business development vertical for what you're doing there. Right. Just like I said, with the doctor thing or anything like that. And so this one was more technology about the newest, fastest, shortest path. So this is just cool because, being an engineer, I'm like, they supposedly broke the barrier of Dijkstra's algorithm for achieving route planning and stuff, but it really has nothing. It could have something to do with AI. Maybe they used AI to help solve that problem, but I don't know. That was just cool stuff for me to read. And then here's Qwen3 Coder that I showed you, LLM and how to use it locally. And I embedded this locally on my machine so I could use it locally and cut the API costs for us. And then to do that. And here's the hierarchical reasoning model thing that I got off of X. And look, August 2nd, that was exactly 13 days ago that he put this out, and I started reading about it. And then almost immediately after I read this, I'm like, I see how this fits into Genius. And I went off and did the SG Processing Manager, like I said, within a couple hours. And then we're working on that to make it very generic to be able to embed any of these kind of breakthroughs, these breakthroughs. So I'm going to pause for a second. I've been talking a lot because I'm passionate, Brent. What say you, my sir?
Well, kind of harping again on the reference to Iron Man, it just amazes me that the ability to, if you know the taxonomy, I guess it comes down to if you know what this is capable of, if you know how to reason in this manner, you are you are a whole cut above. And this kind of goes full circle back to what you said. You are a whole incredibly different beast, a different kind of creature, in terms of what you're able to envision and create, for a business, for an enterprise. And if you are, even if you are just, an IC at a company, that what your productivity is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the thing is this really goes beyond productivity. You're not talking about, well, because I use these methods, I made myself 8% more efficient. I mean, you're talking about transforming the way activities are completed entirely, and maybe even making them irrelevant in most cases. So I myself am, in the process of mapping out, taxonomies, parameterizing of these kinds of models, precisely for the exploration that you were talking about. Is what can I apply this to? What kind of new business idea? And just leapfrog past what otherwise would have taken many teams of people and many different, even agencies. Oh, I need to have assistance from legal. I need to have assistance from compliance. I need to have. He's like, no, no, no. All that stuff can be, you can leapfrog that in just minutes. So, yeah, this is an excellent topic, and I'm actually hoping that whether you're talking about like Genius Chronicles or otherwise, that kind of delving into that taxonomy might be a topic to help
Yeah.
people get their heads around how do you go through the process of engaging with this.
Yeah, and that's the reason I started the Super Genius Chronicles YouTube channel was, I'm not getting any younger, and I'm seeing all this stuff, and I'm really a little disconcerted with the layoffs of the junior level engineers because, um, you know, some I think it's a very bad decision on Microsoft's and other people's thing, and still I encourage people to at least get up to speed on system architecture. Maybe you're not coding. I mean, a lot of times I'll be using Claude code, right? And you have to be able to reason, or you have to be able to uh, what they now call use step by step processes. They call it instruct, where instead of vibe coding, where it just blasts out all the code, and it's good for like quick prototypes that you can do, but when you have something complicated, you have to kind of be able to have the knowledge to know the right paths to go down in the experience. And so we're doing the whole world a disservice by not allowing junior programmers or mid-level programmers to bring their chops to that level that's coming by leveraging AI. And on a kind of um, note on that, we just hired this guy who what is doing that. He fresh out of college, from Sri Lanka, had done this thing, and I was looking for a smart contract slash user interface that does DAO stuff because, well, I guess I might as well make the announcement here. What I've decided to do as part of this is we're spinning up a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, where the community and all the coals are going to have everybody in the DAO is mostly the team right now, and some external community members as well, to basically vote on the direction of the treasury and all that kind of stuff. So I'm still have quite a bit of vote on that, but I'm not going to be around forever, and I want this project to be around forever. I'm only going to be around till 120, so roughly another 100 years because I'm only 20 now. Anyway, yeah. But so I want this project to last forever. So I decided we're going to spin up a DAO. And I was looking, I'm like, okay, let's go search Google. Of course, I didn't, I should have searched Grok first, but I went back to Google and I said, oh, let's find a DAO that has these parameters and this and this and this. And the first two are shit, just to be honest, the first two links. And then there's this third link, and it was on a Medium article. And I go read the Medium article, and he's using everything that almost everything we are currently for Genius. And I'm like, this is perfect. He's using Open Zeppelin libraries for the smart contract. He's using IPFS for storage, which we have. Everything I said, there was like one thing that I was like, he shouldn't use that because we have a replacement for that. And then I read through his article and I'm like, wow, this is architected really well. It's like senior level me type of architecture. I'm like, this is cool. And so I went and looked at his LinkedIn profile and I'm like, oh my God, this kid's like maybe 19, fresh out of college in Sri Lanka with his computer science degree. I'm like, how the heck did he do this? And I go look at the GitHub code and I'm like, oh my God, this was set up like I set up GitHub with like 22 unit tests and so professional. And then I'm starting to realize I'm looking at the README and I'm like, wait a minute, this looks like I wrote the README. And when I write READMEs like that, I'm leveraging AI to help me use the read to generate the README, and I'm giving it the instructions on what I want the README to look like and the different parts of that. So then I go ping Sabaskar's his name on LinkedIn and say, hey, you want to help because your DAO we need your DAO, but we also have this dashboard thing that we need some help on. He's like, sure, sure, yeah, I'll help. And I'm like, oh, how about this amount, for Sri Lanka? And he's like, yeah, I'm on board full time. So this happened on like Saturday. He was onboarded by Sunday, and he's been producing for the last week massive amounts of code and good code for the dashboard and the DAO stuff. So my point is this is why I think that Microsoft and everybody that's laying off the junior level programmers is a big mistake, because if you allow them to use AI and just train them how to do what Sabaskar somehow knew how to do, um, and my Super Genius Chronicles YouTube is going to start to explain how to do all this stuff, right? It's a knowledge transfer to the younger generation that, hey, you need to use AI to help you do this and be more productive, or you are going to be out of a job. No two ways about it. And so I'm going to stop there and let you kind of chime in, because you kind of have a personal experience with something very kind of similar from your past and the C# stuff and all that. And we talked about this last night, but I just want you to kind of give your perspective on what I talked about here, the state of
Well,
AI. And
actually, it's something that occurs to me is that there is such an important role of creativity when you are working with technology, certainly with software technology, and yet there is such a breadth of drudgery as well. So, I think about the World War II veterans who would say that you spend months in supreme boredom, and then suddenly, 2 minutes of absolute terror, is what war is like. And kind of in the old school way of things, you could find yourself not having as much time being creative as you'd like, because so much of the other work for software is just drudgery. And this is turning into, never mind the drudgery, everything is almost all pure creativity, or it just upsets the balance and reverses it dramatically. So it's an invitation. I think you're talking about helping out young people, to get them to understand that this now puts them in the driver's seat of that incredible imbalance. Everything is now loaded up on creativity and very little drudgery. And that should be exciting. So on the one hand, it's very scary. Like, oh my gosh, my job's being affected. Oh gosh, I got laid off. On the other hand, it's like, yeah, just understand what's happening and you can completely upend where you fit in that equation. Now all of a sudden, you're not the one who's being laid off. You're a top producer. So
yeah. So I want to address something, because we've been going on about the future and how we're going to engage. But I want to show a question here that says, okay, before you build a brain, you probably need some income. Hate to be that guy, but focus on Mainnet for a hot second. Okay, we are. It's like there's no not focusing on Mainnet. What's happening is we're this stuff that I'm talking about building a brain, is really building up use cases for businesses, right? That can leverage the AI. And guess what that does? That gives us income. So I'm not focusing on research. And so that's one thing people need to understand about what I'm doing over here on X is like, hey, we have a use case for business that can use this. And here's we have some business development guys now on board that have started to build the use cases for these different businesses. And they're going out to market that very soon. And so, a couple guys came to me about a month ago and said, "Hey, we know you're busy building Mainnet and trying to finish that off, which I believe is super close. But you still need to onboard people so you have people using your system, right? We can still make money from the trading of the token and all this other stuff, but your best thing is you need to scale businesses onto your platform so you can have an income." I said, "Oh, that's great. I know that was needed, but I just haven't had time because we're heads down trying to finish the project." And so they jumped on board, and I really appreciate those two guys. They came on board. They brought on, they basically started setting up all the business development stuff and the marketing and coordinating it. And I was able to delegate so much of that stuff that I was worried about and I had to do to those guys, and it basically allowed me some more freedom to actually figure out how we serve those businesses and things like that. And so when you say, hate to be that guy, before you build a brain, no, it's not that simple. It's more of, hey, we can put this HRM model and build something smarter and give us a leg up for our what value we add to businesses. And so it is all business driven. Um, I'm an anomaly because most tech guys, and I know why this question came about, most tech guys aren't that way. What they do is they focus on, and all these guys are doing that over on you on X, is they're focusing on the technology. They're not, and like I mentioned earlier, I focus on that's great. I understand the technology, and yes, we can do that. And I could come up with my own stuff, and I do, but how are we going to get this to market, right? And how we're going to productize that, and how we're going to build the different verticals using that technology. That's what I'm really good at. Completely understanding the technology and how to build it and how to quickly build it to getting it out to a product for businesses because I've ran businesses and I started a public company and I understand how to productize stuff, from technology to product. And I've been doing this for 45 years or something like that of, hey, the technology is great, but how are you going to make it a product? All these other guys, deep seek engineers and all they want to do is research, right? And I've always said, hey, I know how to use that research and I know how to solve a problem for a bunch of businesses using your research, right? And I understand how your research works and I can connect the dots on how businesses work and how they can use that research. That's kind of my super genius power, is that I'm able to both understand the technology and the connection between the technology and how it solves business problems and connect those two. And now with AI, I can do it even 10x faster than I used to be able to do. So I'm going to pull down that question now, since we went there. Um, all right, so we got about 6 minutes. Let's kind of um, Mr. Paul, if you want to pull up any questions for us, there we go. Um, Thank you for taking the time to do the AMA for us. As your CEO, you're an inspiration. Thank you. I never planned to do that, but it's just, I'm passionate about it. So if that inspires you, thank you. I appreciate that. Made me wonder, which CEOs do you yourself look up to? And what about you, Brent? Okay. Interesting question. I'm kind of torn because I look up to some CEOs in some respects, and I'll give you, for instance, Jensen Huang. I look up to him for 70% of what he does, right? Flat hierarchy, very transparent. It kind of, when it aligns with my morals, my what is that?
Your
Scruples?
your
I don't know,
ethos.
whatever word that is, um, of how I feel I should uh, do things in the world, right? Whatever word, I know there's a word for that, but Jensen aligns with 70% of what he does aligns with how I feel about stuff, right? Of keep the hierarchy flat, be transparent, and that's why I do these AMAs. Treat technologists as rock stars. And that actually was back in the EA days, Electronic Arts days. And I always appreciated that because it motivated me. It's like, hey, we can all be rock stars, but the other side of it is there is, which Jensen hated, which is good. Like, I respected some other CEOs, like Elon Musk, right, for some of the stuff he does. But oh my god, he's a crazy motherfucker sometimes. Um, and it's like I when I start to have respect for somebody, their respect level comes down a little bit when they start to involve politics into stuff. I am a person that loves to make product and make people happy using my product. And all politics, when you get into a big company, and some I've seen this with C-level management and some CEOs sometimes that become assholes, and then politics start to interfere with you producing product, right? And I hate politics. It's like, just let me do my job and get this stuff out the door. I don't give a crap that you know your political views are different from mine, or that internally you're all shuffling. This is why I like flat hierarchies. You're internally shuffling for control and power. I have no interest in that. It's like, look, let's just put a bunch of products out there, make a shit ton of money, and then relax about everything. Flat hierarchy. So for me, Jensen's one, but like I said, only 70% kind of stuff. He's done some stuff that I completely disagree with. He did some personal attacks on some people in the past and things like that, which I'm just like, why do you have to do that? Like I said, Elon Musk, probably 80%, but he's just he's such a on the autism spectrum, you know, way beyond what I am, of just all over the place, and maybe that's hype, and when he got involved in the political side of things, and then it's just like, can't we all just get along? Shut up. I don't care. you know we don't need to be divided, and I just hate that division of stuff, and the politics is all about dividing people. And so there's others. I respected. Um, I respect more CTOs than I do CEOs. And for instance, I have Steve Wozniak, Apple co-founder, sitting on my wall right here with an Apple computer and a signed 5.25 inch floppy disk. And I respect him way more than I respected Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was a great guy, but he wasn't a nice guy, right? And you can be both. And a lot of CTOs, like Steve Wozniak, are nice guys. I mean, I never met him, but just his demeanor, I can tell he's humble and he's a nice guy, and he has no interest in being an asshole. And sometimes CEOs have to be assholes, and I get it, because what ends up happening is people will. I know it's long winded, and we kind of got to get going here, but what happens is, as you kind of get more and more income and power as a CEO, people start to kind of claw at you, and so you kind of rise up, and then you have to put the shield below you to kind of protect yourself. And I've seen some of that go on. Hide where you live. Kind of disconnect from things. And I've seen a little bit of that where I've disconnected a little bit from the FUD and the stuff, and luckily the team can take care of that. You have to disconnect from that, otherwise it starts to drive your life and your technology and getting the product out the door. So I'll pause there. Why don't you go ahead, Brent?
Yeah, my take on this is less about any individual CEO and more about the energies associated with. And I'm conflicted on this because the idea of a wonderfully benevolent CEO who's just got such a big heart. That is endearing, and there are examples of such that are very successful. But in reality, very often it's the kind of malevolent, seemingly CEO that gets the job done. And Steve Jobs is a perfect example of that. I think I would say that there's like it's almost like you have to have distinguish between a benevolent narcissism and a malevolent narcissism. And there's a certain benevolence when you're like Steve Jobs and you're like, you want excellence, you want something absolutely extraordinary, and you will not settle for anything less. And to Ken's point, there has to sometimes be a little bit of an asshole nature where you're just like, this is how it's going to be. And that's what's necessary to get an organization, a whole enterprise to align. And now, hopefully, this doesn't get me in trouble, but Ken has that energy of this is how it's going to be. And if I want to resist or someone else wants to resist and push back, with enough energy, he'll go, okay, I'm listening. But ultimately, that energy is necessary. And I'll chime in if I go back to concrete, CEOs. Just like Ken said, whether you're talking about Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, there's so much to be admired, while at the same time there are those shortcomings, but there just needs to be strength. So, where there is strength, and yes, removing the ideologies as much as possible. I think that's what contributes to what I jokingly calling the benevolent narcissist, is just get the ideology out, and then the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah, thanks for that, Brent. I mean, it is true. I mean, no human's perfect, so that's why it's hard to say, that I um, admire somebody or as an inspiration. But I take pieces from different ones as inspirations quite a bit. But it's I'm human and I'm different from them, so I take inspirational pieces from each of them. But no one's a total inspiration for me. So I think we can. All right, so let's kind of move on. We're a little bit over, but hopefully people don't mind. I'll try to answer a few more questions. Maybe we take another 5 minutes or so. So right now we haven't been focusing on graffiti entertainment, but what we did do recently is we have recently reskinned, and hopefully we can release that soon, the shoot 'em up. And let me remember what the name. We're calling it Storm Raiders now. Completely reskinned, new ships, new characters, everything's reskinned. And I did this because it was a proof of not really proof of concept, but proof of work, proof of ability, I guess, for somebody to prove to me that they have the ability to come in and um, work with Graffiti Entertainment, for instance, to update all the graffiti games to work on Genius, but also to update the graphics and make them, to push out the newest games with new graphics and things like that. Kind of an update for everything. Worked pretty well from the graphics side of things, and Itzafu, who's on here, Gandalf Itzafu, is very good at. We've made it really, really zero friction and for Unity projects to integrate. And Justin, thank you for that. He's been a rock star on helping with the SDK and a Unity plugin for you to be able to do it on Unity. And next up, we'll be doing Unreal kind of thing, which Unreal may be easier because it's all C++. But anyway, so that's kind of the status. Graffiti Entertainment will be shortly after Mainnet. Then that's one of the verticals that we're going to have to scale. And yeah, so that should be coming very shortly after Genius. So they'll start ramping up output of games right after Mainnet, I think. Okay, next question. How bare bones will Mainnet? What number of verticals are you trying to accomplish before release? Mainnet is going to be the opposite of bare bones. Mainnet will be able to do, because the way I architect things, it is data driven over code driven. And so what that means is the SG processing manager, for instance, is all configuration and data driven. And that means there's no code involved. And so this has kind of been my entire career on how to build products. And what that does is allow you to generically take on any verticals without having to change your operating system. It's just like a plugin or something like that. Or in this particular case, it's not even a plugin, it's like a configuration that we can do outside of Mainnet, right? The product's done. It allows you to configure and set up the machine learning models and then send them over to our system because it accepts the configuration and the models and all that. So it's not really a bare bones system because it's more of a all encompassing, data driven, generic. Um, I wouldn't call it generic, but just well architected system that is robust and expandable without having to do code. So that's the MO. And
And
so,
to Ken's point, when you ask, what number of verticals, well, when you're using a declarative system of organizing the models, that's kind of like saying how many different tasks is C++ usable with. It's like, well, all of them,
yeah, yeah,
everything.
yeah. Yeah. And that was the whole goal with Mainnet being released is the fact that it is more, like you said, declarative. That's kind of a big word for people. And it just means you declare stuff that you want it to do in text format and then, or configuration, and then it does it for you instead of coding, which is more you figure out kind of what you want to do and you write a bunch of lines of code to tell it what to do. It's kind of like the difference between an LLM and coding, right? It's like, hey, code this up for me and it does it, instead of you having to code it up yourself. It's kind of a similar declarative thing, but more um, not generating code, but more, hey, I want to do this. Okay, here you go. Here's the models and here's the configuration for doing that. So, all right, next question. Thanks for that, Alex. I guess he's looking through the questions. Some of this is more comments. Here we go. All right. So I guess we're out of questions. Cool. All right. Cool. Sounds like closing. Thanks everyone for watching this. Again, I think we're gonna kind of do more of these, but I'm also gonna kind of switch to doing some Super Genius Chronicles things where we can, kind of go on for longer and they'll be technical and some won't be technical. And so then you can pick and choose which ones you want to watch. But these AMAs are always kind of important too. So we should at least strive to do one a month minimal on these AMAs, I think. Maybe more once we're sure that we're going to release mainnet, and after that, then we'll start to do uh, more high level ones of hey, mainnet's ready. Here's how you can onboard. But that's really more kind of developer relations type of stuff, and so this is more to kind of give everybody an update of what has been going on. But I believe once we get the bridging kind of working, then we can say we're mainnet because the Genius tokens from the main nets will be being able to be used for AI processing. And so we can call that version one. Version 1.1 will have some additional capabilities, but it's very easy to release that because while we're onboarding games and stuff like that, we can very quickly push out 1.1 with some additional features for any new apps or games that are launching. So thank you for all that. Closing statements from you, Brent?
Nothing here. I think that it was a good AMA today. Really awesome. And like I said at the beginning, it's one of those, it's so exciting. I can't wait to hear what I have to say. No, really was really a lot of fun listening in on this. And just doing our kind of our usual otherwise, and a little bit of banter as well. I might point out that you said 45 years experience, but you're only 20. So I'm not sure why that didn't generate a question somewhere, but
It's my anti-aging regimen. I'm going backwards now. So,
got it.
and actually, that's funny that you mentioned that because in the Super Genius Chronicles, I am going to be talking about a lot of the anti-aging stuff that I've been doing for the last 10,
Mm.
15 years. So, talking about some of the tricks that I've learned that have helped me keep a sharp mind and also just, I mean, in diet in general, because of some of the things I found that work for me. But no guarantees it's going to work for you, because our DNA is completely different. I will talk about that. I'll say, look, here's what works for me, and here's some of the things I have in my DNA and why I have to do this. And things like that. But I will talk about that also in the Super Genius
I
Chronicles.
think you're going about this the wrong way. I think you should guarantee people if they take your advice, they will be super geniuses. Just guarantee it.
Nah, can't do that. Can't do that. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Glad you could join, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks all.